Hello, in this video we're going to talk about a complete guide to console.log. So this is the standard way to log text to the console in JavaScript. Now you can log a whole bunch more things, from text to numbers to any variable in JavaScript. You could log errors, warnings, you could style things, and basically there's a whole bunch of other things you could do with this. You could profile, you could do console.time, so there's a lot of things you can do. We're going to focus on console.log, console.warn, and console.error in this video, which are really the most commonly used console.logs. In general, I think putting breakpoints is better than console.log because you're inspecting data rather than, putting a log statement and typing out that text that you have to later delete. I think log statements are a little bit more verbose, but if you are in a really complicated code base and you just want to log something really quick rather than finding that file, then console.log is definitely going to be the way that you should go here. So at first example here, this is just basic console.log. In the arguments here, we're putting a text string here. And as you can see on the console, this is being logged over here. So now if we go down to the next example, you might be thinking, if you want to do multiple console.logs, you could copy and paste this throughout the next line, but that's a little bit tedious. What you could do instead is simply just add a comma here and then add another line of text or whatever you want to add in. You could add a variable in here, a JavaScript variable. As I show in the next example, we are logging. There's no limit to the number of arguments here, so you could add in as many arguments as you want. So here I'm logging in some strings, a number, an array, an object, and then an undefined here. So that's what that looks like here. If we go to the console here, you could see the array and the object are things that we can expand out and look at more data for those items. But it's nice, they give you a nice preview here for the object and the array, so you can make some assumptions by just looking at it like that, and it's cool. So the most commonly used way to do this, if you're trying to log like an object or something, would be, in this example, we have this board object here. And here, what we're doing is, rather than do, let's say you want to log a bunch of different things in different spots, what you can do here is that you're logging the text string first, and then after that you have the object. So here we have that object being logged, and I can once again expand and view the data that I want. But the key thing here is that you're labeling it ahead, so it's nice. So you're not just logging some random object that you don't know where it is. Now, something to know about logging objects is that this is actually, it's by reference. So you're not logging this actual value here. You're logging it at the time of you're opening it, the end result value, right? So this is a reference to this thing called initial state. Now, if after I log it, I do something like this, where I say initial state dot foo equals bar, what's going to happen is, if we look at this, we actually have that foo bar in there. So if you're trying to log a bunch of objects one after another to try and see data changing, what you would do instead is you would try and either make a copy of that object, or for example, what you could do in this example, I'm just going to make a quick shallow copy of this object. So I made a copy of this object at this time, so now I have this copy here, and now this doesn't have that new object that I added here, or that new property that I added on here. But this isn't a deep copy. So what that means is, if I change the grid, then that grid will be whatever I changed it as. So it's going to be the current value. So you just have to keep that in mind. When you're logging it, you're logging the current value of that object at the end of all of your code execution. You're not logging the current value. If you want to log the current value, you have to do a deep copy, which we'll do another tutorial on. So next thing we're going to do is just log string substitutions. So I'll be honest, this I pretty much never do. I don't really ever need really nice formatted logs like this. But let me just comment out the other things here that I have. So if I comment out this. So as you can see here, it's substituting this string here, %s, and then at the end, it's going to substitute in the current value I into that string statement. Now, like I said, and then also you have a number here, which is %d. And if you go to the console API from Mozilla, you could see the list of the substitution. So You can accept this, so accept these substitution strings. You could put an object in your log. You could do a %d, an integer. So d is an integer, and then you could also have a string, and then an f is a floating point. Now, I would never do this because if I was doing this, I would probably just use a JavaScript template, which is basically just a template in JavaScript, which looks like this. So I would basically, for example, I would just get rid of all this, and I would just put this in here, and then for whatever I wanted to log, I would just use the dollar here, and then I would just say, there we go. So I would do something like that instead. So, and I would just, yeah. So this is what I would do if I wanted to. So as you can see, this is a string template. So this is the way that I would prefer to do this, just because then you could put anything in here and you don't have to worry about the formatting of that string substitution. That's probably a pre-JavaScript template thing that's just kind of left over. So again, if I put in like initial state, that's going to log that object here, but that doesn't work out. So let me see what happens if we use the %o in here. So let's go back to the thing here, and we see %o. So we do this %o, and then we use the initial state here, and let's just see what this would log here. Okay, so if we use the string %o in this example, we're logging this string statement here. And so then we could put like some text after this, for example, hello object, how are you? So we do that, and then you could see now if you wanted some kind of log like this where you had an object in the middle of a bunch of text, you would use the string substitution. But again, something I really would never do. So just showing you that. So we're going to comment that out, and we're going to move on to the next thing, which is styling. So again, something that I don't do, but it's really cool, and I think probably more people are going to start doing this. For if you wanted, maybe you had some kind of extension, or you're putting some code on someone's site and you want to style a message for them, you could do it like this, where you have this stylish message here. So basically it's just adding in a string of styles after. And I took this example from the website Mozilla. So this is just using the %c to apply a CSS style to the output. The text before the directive will not be affected, but the text after the directive will be styled. So, I mean, this is really something that is pretty niche, and I don't think there's ever a point to doing this, especially since logs are not shown in production usually. So you would never really need to do this. So unless you wanted, you had a really intense log scenario and you needed a bunch of different styles to come out, you could do this if you wanted to. So that's really cool. I think it's cool, but again, not very useful. All right. So next thing we're going to talk about is console.warn. So console.warn is basically, you've seen libraries like React do this. They will put this warning in your app if you're using a deprecated function, for example, or you're doing something that you want the user not to do, but to be aware of, but not necessarily to throw an error or crash your app or anything. You would do this. So this would show you the stack trace of that warning, just so you can know where that came from. So you can say, oh, it came from React or wherever it came from. And so that's really cool. So you could do console.warn in your own apps, right? So if you're writing an open source library, or if you're writing some kind of so if you're writing an open source library or a tool or something that someone should use, even an internal library for people that you're using some kind of component or something, you could throw a warning in that. So we're going to comment that out. Next thing is console.log. I want to console.log this error. So this is a try catch block. So I'm going to just throw an error here and just going to create some breaking functionality. And then I'm going to catch that error with a console.log. So what happens if we just console.log that error? We get the stack trace. So you can see here that, it's pretty useful to have this stack trace in here. And if you want to put something in front of that, you could do that as well. So I think the default is just going to be console.error. So if we just do that, then we've caught the error. So we're not going to break our app. So this is console.error. So we do that, and now you get the red text. So it's the same thing, except it's red. And that's basically, the whole point of console.error. It just makes the text red. It doesn't actually break your app. So you could see, like, my app is still functioning over here, but I caught that JavaScript error, so my app is not crashed. So let's continue on. So if I want to type something else, so I could make my own error message in here if I want to say you did something bad. And then I could log the stack trace if I wanted to. So let's go look at that. And so, you could put a return statement. You could make one error that does this. So maybe you'd want to make an error like that, and then you'd want to do the actual stack trace for the user. So see that. See what that looks like. So there we go. So this is cool. This is like, hey, you want to make your own error logging? You could do that with this pretty easily. So again, you can make it whatever. Say you don't have to make it output the stack trace, but that would be nice for you to do if you were making a library to include that stack trace there. So there we go. So this is just the console.error. And okay, so that's console.error. That's pretty much all I have for console.log and console.warn and console.error. If you have any other questions on this, just let me know and I'll make another video on it. Thank you. If you enjoyed this video, check out the full course linked in the description. You'll learn a lot more tips and tricks to help you debug your React projects. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you and have a great day.